Hey guys, we will going to now cover about the functions in this Python free course. Okay, so this will be the part 6 where we will going to cover about the Python functions in very detail. We will going to go ahead with lots of things like argument, create, decorator, generator, global, keywords, local, main. So there are plenty of concepts we will going to cover about the functions from scratch. Okay, so from discussing the basics to discuss about all the key features and concepts of functions, everything has been covered in very detail, okay, inside this particular free course regarding the Python function. So make sure that you watch the complete free course from starting to end. Hey guys, so before we proceed further, I just want to tell you about this blog article. In case you don't know about it, just search for KuKu courses. Go to kukucourses.com website, and after you come here, just go to extras, click on blogs, okay, and you will see this learn to code Python for beginners. In case you don't see it here, so just search for learn to code Python, click on search button and click on learn to code Python for beginners like this. Okay, so you will come to exactly the same block. Now of course, if you will going to notice, the current you are watching is the part 6, which is function, and related to that we have put all the notes for you. But let's say in case you are the person who have not yet watched, let's say, uh, previous parts, okay, so make sure that you watch it. So we have part 1 here. You can see part 2 is about operator, part 1 is about basics, part 3 is about condition, part 4 is about strings, part 5 is about list, tuples and dictionary. And inside each of these topics you can see, inside each of this part you will see various topics. And similarly we have learn to code Python, which is the part 6 function, which we will going to cover right now, okay. But in case you haven't watched the previous version, so you can simply click on, let's say, part 1. It will take you to the part 1 and you will see one video of part 1, okay, and whatever taught in the video, so related to that we have notes over here, okay. So similarly, if you go with the part 2, same here, for part 2 as well you have a video, and related to that we have provided below the notes. So it's for each and every of the part, okay. So currently you guys are watching, let's say, part 6, okay, which is this one, part 6, that are related to functions. Now whatever we will going to teach you inside this course related to functions, so for all of them we have provided here the notes, okay. So even after watching the video, in case you want some sort of a notes, so you don't need to do some efforts. We have directly put the notes inside the blog article, okay. So you can just go ahead and learn each of the notes here. By the way, we will going to explain each of the things, okay, inside this particular part, like what is arguments, functions, global variable, local variable, decorator, generator. So everything will be covered, okay. So do not worry about any of the thing, okay. So make sure that you access to this blog article. It's something very useful for you, okay, always. So now guys, let's see about what is functions, okay. So I created a folder, okay, named functions, and here I have main.py file. Now guys, let's first understand why we uh, do functions, okay. What is the use of function? So for example, as I create a variable and inside that I define a value 10. Similarly for b, let's say 20. And let's say if I just go ahead here and I say a plus b, okay. Now if you run it, you will see, you will going to get the result 10 plus 20, 30. But let's say I want to use this same function again, okay, that is, so I will again need to write this, okay. And let's say this time I put here maybe 30. So what is happening now is that for running this particular function a plus b, I am repeating the same code again and again. and because of that the code is becoming very big. So the very first benefit of the functions are you can create a function and you can use it again and again. So this is the first benefit. If you just go here to, let's say, learn to code here, and what is function? So a function is a block of a code that performs a specific task. You write it once and use it as many as times. So what we do is that instead of writing this code again and again, we write one function and we call that function again and again. I will show you that. So what you have understood for now is that the functions is reusable. That means no need to repeat the same code again and again. Okay. So this is the very important benefit of it. So suppose if I just go ahead and let's say if I create here create.py over here. Now let's say I write one function. So to write any function, okay, we have also told you that you need to use this def, that is define. You need you basically, it's some sort of a rule. You need to write this to define a function. Okay, so suppose I define a function here like def, and I will say like greet. You can write it whatever you want, and after this put colon like this, and just write here print, let's say hi. Okay, now see, I have written this function only one time. Now I can call this function anytime I want. Now if you run it, so you will see nothing will going to work. So how you can call it? It's very simple. So whatever the function name is, just call it greet, call it like this, and now you will see it will run. You can see hi. So you can see as many as time, like I just copy the function, use it as many as time, hi, like this, run it. You can see hi repeated 4 times. So earlier what was happening is that we need to write the whole particular code again and again, but this time we have only written it one time. Okay, over here, and you just need to call the function by its name as many as time, and it will going to call that particular function. So you basically don't need to write this function like this, let's say again and again like this. You are writing it, let's say, one more time again and again. So you don't have to do that. So what you have understood for now is that when we create any function, we use this define, and then we write whatever the name of the function, okay, and what that code has to do. So it has a, you know, very simple thumb rule, that you will going to use a define function like this, and then write whatever the name of that particular function, and inside this you can put, you know, parameter. Now what is parameter, we will going to talk about it. Then whatever you want to do, let's say code execute. So this is very simple syntax of function. So same we have done here. What we done, we have put define, then we put the name here, you can see. And if you want to put the parameter, you can, but right now there is no parameter. I'm keeping it empty. And even do not get, you know, confused what is parameter. We will going to talk about that. And after this, you can see we put colon. So here you can see we put the colon. Okay, and then whatever code you want to execute. So I executed print hi. Now whenever you want to call it, so whenever you want to call any function, just type the name of that function. For example, let's say name, like that, and it will going to work. Okay, so this is something how, you know, you create the functions. Very simple, you know, nothing to go and you know, worry about it. Okay, so it's a, you know, very simplest concept. Now let's say I create, let's say, another example. Okay, let's put it okay, wait, Now let's say this time I create, let's say another function. Let's say I say like define, let's say I can say like this, car start, then bracket same, and then let's say I will, let's say print car started, like this. Now same thing I did, again I put define like that. Here you can see define, and then I set the name of that function. So the name of the function I set car start. Okay, so you all know that we cannot put the space in Python, we need to use underscore, so car underscore start. And after this we put here, currently there's no parameter, so we keep that as empty, do not worry what parameter is. And then after that we put the colon, okay, over here. And then after here you just need to write what you want to do. So I said that whenever anyone call this function, I want to print this particular thing, that is car is started. So let's say if I go here and if I write here car start, like this. Okay, so run it, you can see car is started, like this. So you just need to call that function and the function will start to work. That is how it is. Okay, so it's totally up to you how many times you want to write it. So suppose I write here, I have written 4 times, you can say it's now printed 4 times car is started, like that. So this is something very easy, nothing to go worry about it, that functions are very complicated and all. We will try to cover each of the thing, step by step, so you don't get confused in any case. Now let's go here to our particular meaning function. So the very key feature is reusability, which is something very important. You can see we have written the function only one time, okay, and that is what the meaning is. So we just write the function once and we can use it as many as times. So you can see this function I have written one time and I'm calling this function as many as time. Here you can see. So this is what the main core concept of function is all about. Now if we just talk about the key features, first is the reusability, so no need to repeat the same code again and again. Then modularity, that means break big programs into manageable parts, and this is what we do. So in when we use or write the function, so we create this small functions and we call it whenever we want to. And the third one is the scoping, control which variables are visible inside and outside. So we will going to cover this thing is something, go and talk more about the uh, local variable and global variable. We will going to talk about that, but this is something of the scoping. But when we talk about the advantages, it makes the code clean and organized, easy to debug and maintain, and reuse without retyping. Now here first thing is that you can see function looks very simple, very clean, and you can call this as many as time. Okay, now easy to debug and maintain. So if you face any problem, just rectify the error, and let's say you want to maintain it, so you can maintain it. Now let's say instead of, let's say now let's say you want to easily maintain it. So what does this mean? So suppose in the function, let's say I want to change something, so instead of this I say cars are started, like that. So you just need to make the changes in the main function, and rest it will, wherever you have called the function, it will automatically going to get itself dynamic with the changes we have made. Okay, so you can see cars are started. So sometimes what happen, if you use, let's say this old function, or maybe you use the same function again and again, okay, without function, let's say if you use this type of a function, so let's say anywhere you want, and in case in future if you want to make changes, so you have to open every file and you have to make the changes everywhere. But when we use the function, so what happen is that in the main function, whatever changes you want to do, you can. Okay, so wherever you have called that function, it will automatically going to get updated. So in this way you can say that the functions are easily maintainable. Okay, that means you can easily maintain it without any problem. Then we have reuse without retyping. Okay, so you can see you can use it as many as time without any problem, but of course it has some minor disadvantages, like it requires extra thinking to structure logic, which I believe if you practice it, everything will become sorted up for you. Too many functions can make the simple script hard to trace. So I believe that if you properly structure it, so it's not also a problem. Okay, you can easily manage the functions. Okay, but sometimes what happens is that we write, let's say, hundreds of functions. So sometimes it becomes like, let's say, you cannot remember the function name, okay, and what that function do. So for the memorized person, this could be some problem. Okay, but these are some minor things, but in real case we generally don't face that issue. So this is about the what the function is all about. Okay, now guys, we will going to talk about the concept of parameters and arguments. So guys, it's very simplest concept. So for example, let's say I go here name, and let's say I put here, let's say name, maybe let's say Kunal. Okay, and let's say I want to print dynamic value. So you all know that how you put it. So let's say I write like this, hi. Okay, then I can call this particular name, hi Kunal, how are you, question mark. Okay, so to make it dynamic, what you do is, let's say, you add f. So we have already taught you all this, the concept. So if you even run this thing, so you can see hi Kunal, how are you, and let's say instead of Kunal, let's say I put maybe, let's say, Maya. Now it will just going to become dynamic, like hi Maya, how are you. So guys, here what's happening is that this is the name, which is something dynamic. So we generally say it as a parameter. Parameters are those values which you basically where the user put what should be the value, okay, inside that parameter. So parameters are variable name used in the function definition. Okay, so name, let's say similarly, let's say I create another let's say variable. Okay, let's say 50. Now let's say I want to use this particular variable as a parameter. So what I can do, I can say how are you, your age is, then what you can do, you can use the curly brackets and write here age, like this. Now if you run it, you can see hi Maya, how are you, your age is 50, something like this. So this particular parameter are also a sort of a variable, but you use it for some type of a function definition. So here you can see I use it as a function definition, where I'm just making it, I'm using that particular variable as a parameter. Okay, so whatever user put here, so that value get inserted over here. Okay, and this value means argument. Okay, so whatever uh, argument, or I can say value, you pass for that particular parameter, so that is known as argument. So this Maya will also be considered as a argument, because this particular argument, okay, we have pass for the parameter name. Similarly, the 50 will be considered as an argument which we have defined for the parameter age here. So if you change, let's say, both of them, John age is, let's say, 25, 24. Run it. So you can say hi John, how are you, your age is 24. So always remember, arguments are the value which we allot to that particular parameter, but parameters are those particular variable which we use to call the functions. Okay, so let's see this in the point of view of, I can say, functions. Now let's say we remember this one we have created, okay, which is the defined one, okay. So let's say here I can use this over here. Let's say let's just first go with that old one. For example, let's say define, let's say greet. Remember this particular one which we used, and we say print, let's say hi, okay. Now how you can make it dynamic? So like we have done over here with okay. So wait, let me just put it in the quotes. Sorry, wait. Okay. Okay, so here let's say I have this particular one. Okay, remember the same thing. So here you remember we created a parameter. So same what you can do here is that let's say you want to call this particular function. So what you will going to do, you will call like this greet, pass it here, and you will going to see the function will work like this hi. Now let's say I want to make it dynamic. So like here we have done or created the parameter, okay, which we have put inside the print, okay. So let's say I create this variable. So what I can do here is that inside this bracket, so you all know in the syntax we told you that inside the brackets you can see we put the parameter, okay. So let's say here this name was a parameter, remember, sorry. So I can put this name, let's say over here like this, and let's say hi, I can say like this hi. Then in the curly brackets I can pass this parameter, and you all know to make it dynamic we use f, remember f to make it dynamic, okay. So I will put like this f. Now if you pass the grid directly like this, so you will see it will say the missing one argument. That means argument is missing because this is a parameter. So as I have told you, for every parameter you need some argument, a value which you will going to assign for that parameter. So for this name parameter we have not passed any of the arguments. So argument you can pass here, let's say whenever you call any function. So let's say Kunal I write. Now if you run it again, you can see hi Kunal like this. Awesome. Instead of this, let's say you call Maya, you can see hi Maya like this. So this is how you use the parameters and arguments, okay. Now let's say we have this particular case, okay. Let's say define car. So let's say here, let's say I want to put one parameter inside it, okay, which I want to pass. So for example, let's say car start, okay. So I can say car name, okay. So user will going to put the car name, and this particular parameter I can also pass it here. Let's say car underscore name, the same parameter I use it here. And to make it dynamic you add f here like this. Now we have this car name as a parameter. Now whenever you want to run this particular function, if you run it again, it will say now parameter, sorry, the argument is missing. Now you can say like this, okay. And let me also customize it like this. Now let's say car name, let's say I say maybe let's say BMW X3, let's say. So I pass the argument to the parameter car name. Now you will see, run it, you can see in the place of car name it has replaced with the BMW X3, you can see. So BMW X3 car is started, rest everything will be same, but this will going to change, okay. So this is something, and instead of this, let's say I write here, let's say Audi let's say a2. Okay, now I pass the argument to the parameter car name. So car name is now, let's say, Audi A2, which is argument. Run it. You can see Audi A2, which is argument, is passed here, and this car is started. Audi A2 car is started. So this is how, my dear friends, uh, the concept of, I can say, parameters and argument work in the function. It's very easy, nothing complicated. And the best part is that you can use this particular function as many as times. So for example, this time I use for ODA2, I can again copy this particular function. I can put here, instead of car name, I can say here, let's say BMW X5. Okay, now let's say I again use it. Let's say instead of car name, let's say this time I can put it, let's say Mercedes Benz A class, like that. So you can see I created this function template once, but I'm using the same function again and again for various cars. Now if you just run a call the application, you can see first one is showing Audi A2 car is started, BMW X5 car is started, Mercedes Benz A class car is started. So now you guys are basically be able to understand the reason why we told here in the function that the function basically helps you to create a block of a code that perform a specific task. So we created a block of code here which is known as function, and this function you write it only once and you can use it as many as times. So you can see this function we have written only one time, but you can see we have used it, let's say 3 times. You can use it as many as times you want. So that is the main core concept of the function. But for now you guys have understood what is the concept behind the parameters and arguments. So parameter basically means such type of a value which where you want to insert arguments. Okay, now let's talk about the types of arguments. So you all have understood that arguments are the values we assign for that particular parameter. Now there are types of arguments. Okay, so let's focus on it. Okay, awesome. So there are 3 types. First is the positional, then we have the keyword, and we have a default. So we have 3 types of it. Okay, so let's discuss about it. So let's start with the positional argument. Okay, so what is basically the positional? But before that, there are 3 types of argument, as you can see in notes. Okay, now let's focus on, let's say, the very first one which we have is the positional. So I will just going to create a new one, positional.py. Okay, so how basically it works? So for example, let's say I define another function as say grid, very simple, like this basic one, and I just write here print. Okay, and let's say I want to write here, let's say welcome, okay, to welcome Kunal to my whatever city. For example, let's say Mumbai. So this Kunal is name, and this, let's say Mumbai, or let's say New York. So New York is a city. So what I can do is that, let's say, you all know that now whenever I will going to call this particular function, copy, paste it here, run it, you can see welcome Kunal to my city. Now how to make it dynamic? So using parameters. remember, so we can put here parameter. Let's say I put here name, and you can put multiple parameters. So for example, name, comma, let's say I put city. Now instead of Kunal, I can just make it to, let's say, name, and instead of city I can put it to, let's say, city, like this. And to make it dynamic, you need to add F, remember, like this. Awesome. So when you make it dynamic, so you can see it will going to highlight it like this, F, so it will make it highlight. Now again, if you run it, so it will say two missing arguments, okay, because we have not mentioned the name and the city. Now to make it work, let's say I need to write here some value. So let's say if I write here, let's say name, okay, so instead of name, let's say I write the city first. So let's say I write city, maybe let's say Mumbai, and let's say comma, let's say I write the, let's say, name in the second number, let's say Kunal, like this. Now if I run it, you can see it will be so complicated. Welcome Mumbai to my Kunal, like this. It looks complicated, okay. So always remember, when we talk about positional argument, so whenever you pass the argument value, like let's say I pass Mumbai, but Mumbai is related to city, and Kunal is related to, Kunal argument is related to parameter name, and you know Mumbai argument is related to parameter city. So what I did is that I put them in the opposite. So now let's say if I put it here Kunal, and I say here, let's say I put here, let's say Mumbai, like this. Now you will see it will be correct. You can see welcome Kunal to my Mumbai, like this. Instead of this, whatever argument you want to pass, let's say New York, so it will say like this, welcome Kunal to New York. Or let's say I put, let's say Maya, so it will say like this, welcome Maya to my New York, like this. So always remember, when we talk about positional arguments, so always remember that whatever parameter you have at very first, so according to that, you first need to pass the argument related to that parameter only. For example, if it's name parameter, so you need to pass the name argument first, otherwise it will going to create the problem. And in the second one we have city, so in the second one we have passed the argument for the city parameter. So otherwise, as you have seen that if we opposite it, so it will going to give us the very weird response, okay, like you have seen at the top, welcome Mumbai to my Kunal. So this makes it sound weird. So that's the reason positional is very much important. Positional, its name only suggesting position. So keep in mind the position, that if name parameter is first, so that means whatever parameter you have, so related to that parameter you need to pass the argument. So let's say we have a first parameter, let's say example is a name parameter, so you need to pass the argument of the name parameter at very first, and this is how it will going to work, okay, because Python is not that much smart that it will automatically going to say, like, even if you put here Maya, it will automatically say that it's related to name, so it will automatically going to do that way. So it's not that much smart, so you need to take care about the positions, okay. So this is known as positional argument, okay. And the second one we have here, let's say keyword. So for that, wait, let me just copy this same one. Now we have, let's say, keyword.py. I paste the same example. Now here we have a name and city. Now guys, see, earlier what was happening, it was creating the problem, but now it will become more easy using keyword. So you can define the keyword that this Maya is related to name. You can put it like this, name equals to Maya, and city equals to New York. Now you can see it will work like this. Now even if you shuffle it, for example, let's say I put let's say name at the last, comma, name, like this. Now you can see name, I should put the first, but with the keyword you have already defined that name here is Maya and city here is New York. So even if you run it, you can see still it will be correct. Welcome Maya to my city. So welcome, the name parameter, so it has checked that name keyword is allotted for the Maya, so it has put the Maya here to my city. For city we have put it equals to New York, so the city has come here. So you can even define by using the keyword like this, okay, that what for which particular parameter what argument has to be passed. Okay, so you can put that like this in the equals to format, so that the argument get assigned with that particular parameter. Okay, so this is known as keyword 1. Okay, and let's say the last one we have is the default. Paste it. So sometimes let's say I don't want to pass anything. Okay, so if you do, let's say, that way, so what will going to happen, it will show you error. So sometimes this could possible that the user want to user has called the function, but they have forgotten to put the argument for that parameter. This could be possibility. So just for a safe side, we just define the default value, okay, at the top only. For example, let's say if no one will going to pass here, if someone forgets to put the argument here, so in such case, just for a safe side, that it shouldn't go empty. So instead of that, we generally put one default, let's say, argument. Let's say I want to set the default argument as Kunal, and city, uh, let's say New York, like this. So even if now let's say we haven't put the argument, okay, here, and if you run that way, so it will show two error for, let's say, two argument is missing. But this time it will not going to be problem, because we have set the default value of this particular parameters. Okay, we have already set the argument for the name parameter as Kunal, and argument New York for the parameter city, we have assigned that default to New York. So in let's say some user has forgotten to put the argument here, okay, and if they run now, so you can see it will by default put the default values. Okay, so this is very much useful when someone forgot to put the argument. So we just pass the default value, so that at least it doesn't fill the empty, or it doesn't show the error. Okay, to avoid that, we put the default value. But let's say if someone put here, uh, let's say Maya, okay, and put comma, let's say Mumbai, like this. Now the user has put now the argument. Now what will going to happen, see, if you run it, so Python will now going to take this one, okay, because this one is the default. In case this particular arguments will only be used when user doesn't pass any argument, right? So in such case, okay, so in such case this default value will pass. But let's say if any user has put their argument here, so it will going to pass what the user has put here. So that is what is known as default. By the way, for this we have nodes here which you guys can read, like positional argument, okay, keyword, and the default. Okay, so you can say default is assigned in case none are passed. Okay, so you can just read more about it. But this is how it works, and this is how it's related to functions. Okay, now guys, we will going to talk about the easy concept we have written. Now many people go confused between written and print. Now you all know that what print do. We have done plenty of things, so whatever we want to do, so we just print it and it display the result here in the terminal. So that is where the display, to display things we use print. It's a temporary output, okay, for we humans. Okay, so it's very much important for you to understand that whatever you have done, okay, like you print, okay, anytime, okay, uh, let's say we print, right? So the print will always going to give you the result that we see here in the terminal. Okay, for whatever case you're using, okay, we use print to display that result. You can say print, it will display the result to we humans, but written is used for the computers. Okay, basically print display the result, but written will give you the result, okay, to the computer, okay, used for the further logic. Okay, so let's see how written works. So both works the same way. If you just go, let's say, and if I just define, let's say, uh, get full name. Okay, so this is the function name I have kept here. Unless I want the users, okay, but before that let me just create the basic one, and let's say here I want full name from the users. Okay, so what I can do is that I can pass the parameter here, let's say first name, okay, of the user, and let's say last name of the user. So I will ask here, let's say, in the curly brackets, you all know that this is parameters. Okay, so you will going to ask it in the parameters like first, okay, and let's say space last, right? And sorry, not this way. Okay, uh, okay, so make sure that you properly give it, okay, in the brackets, curly bracket, first, okay, and in another curly bracket it's, you know, last, like this. Wait, here in the curly brackets it's last, right? And you put F here. So this is how you put for the written. Now you have set this full name, but let's say how you want this. So we want that it to return full name, like this. So this is how you put the full name. Okay, now let's say I will call this particular one get full name here, and let's say the first name, let's say Kunal, and the last name, let's say Lunhari. But will it work? Answer is no. So you need to put it inside a variable result equals to, and now you can print the, you know, result. So this is where your return function will work. So now you can see Kunal Lunhari. So what you need to understand, it's very simple. You can use whatever you want to, but just understand print help you to display the result. It's a temporary output which we see here, okay, generally for we humans, but computers generally understand the return. It basically give you the result like this. Okay, we have got the result. Okay, it used for the logical and generally for the computers, but it's totally up to you whatever you want to use, whether let's say return or let's say uh, print, whatever you want to use you can. Okay, so that's the thing. Okay, so we have even given you the return, meaning use return to send back the value from the function. Okay, so now once this result you will going to get, so using this result, okay, which we have got here, so this result a computer can use it for various purpose. Okay, in future, let's say uh, if we create some program, so this result, let's say Kunal Lunhare is the name allotted here, and it's now stored inside the variable result, and that we can use it to maybe somewhere else. But in general, don't get too much confused between the written and print. But what I suggest you is, whenever let's say you have any doubts, let's say you can open chat gpt. Okay, just go to chat gpt and you can ask, hey, in Python I am confused about, let's say, print versus written. Okay, so you can see it will also going to help you to explain the concepts, okay, used to display something on the screen. The console, it's mainly for humans to see the output, so that is what the print. Return is basically sent back from the function, so it can be used later in the program. So this is what I told you, that once this value Kunal Lunar is stored inside the result. Okay, so now let's say whenever you call the result, okay, so this result will going to have the value, this particular name stored. Okay, so this particular result we can use it in future, okay, in the program. Okay, but when we use print, it's temporary, okay, just for we humans to see how the program looks or how it works. Okay, so it temporarily shows the result. Okay, so this is what it is. Okay, so you can see here that print shows something on the screen, it gives the value back from the function. Output visible, yes, in the console, no, unless you print it manually. Okay, and can be reused, no, because it just print and that's it. But yes, it can store in the variable, and which you can use it in future. Okay, so okay, so this is where, and you can ask it as many as questions or doubts you have. For example, let's say you can ask, hey, uh, I am comfortable, let's say, in print only, what to do. Maybe you may have this doubt, you can ask to chat gpt, it will uh, give you the result. Okay, okay. So this is something, you need to, of course, you are beginners now, you can just carry on with the print, but in future you may need to use written. Okay, when you actually work for the program. But let's for now, okay, you can go with that. Okay. Okay, so this is how the difference between the written and print we have. Now guys, we have the concept of local versus global variables. Now what is the local variable? Now guys, local variables are those variables which we can use inside the function only. Okay, always remember that you cannot access outside of the function. So you all know that what is function. Function can be this function. Okay, remember, this is the function. So this local variable you use inside the function, which you cannot use anywhere on your Python. But global variable are those variables which can be used anywhere on your Python, including inside your function. So let's see how it works. So suppose I go here and let's say I create the variable local. Okay, and let's say I put here, let's say, define message. Okay, and after you have done this, you can put maybe, let's say, choice. Okay, let's say I can put I love, maybe, let's say, uh, my girlfriend, right? And after you do this, you can just write, let's say, print, let's say, choice. like this. Okay, so this is the function I have written. Now this function, which is choice, this is inside of your function, so this will become the local I can say, local variable that is inside a function. But if we try to access it outside, we cannot do that. Okay, so not accessible outside. So suppose if I want to, let's say, call this particular function like this, let's say message. Okay, and let's say I want to call it maybe print choice. So you can see it is not even taking that. Okay, because it's inside this function. So this is what the local variables are. So local variables are, basically it will be inside your function, but if you try to access it outside, you cannot do that. So this is what we have. So even if you, let's say, run it, you can see uh, it will show you this error. Okay, so first it will going to print the normal message, okay, which you can see it has printed. But when we try to go ahead and try to run it outside, it doesn't work. So that is something we have here. Okay, the local. Okay, now let's talk about global. So for example, if I go here and if I go with global.py, let's say I create a function, let's say message. Okay, and let's say I say like print, let's say uh, inside the function. Okay, and let's say I go ahead and put here, let's say choice, like this. Okay, now let's say okay, even if you don't put it, let's say choice here, let's say we have choice, let's say outside, we created a global variable outside of the function, and the choice values, let's say I love myself. Okay, now see this, if you put it here. Okay, let's say now this is a global value which is outside. You can see this is function, but outside of this we created a function, or I can say variable, that is the global variable. You can see global variable outside of the function. You can see it's outside here. So I can use this same global variable inside the function, and that is what the meaning is. So whenever you use any outside variable, so you can put that inside the function. So you can see if I put here comma, let's say I put here choice, like this, you can see without showing error it has done. So now let's say if I call this function, run it, you can see it will say like this, inside the function, and then I love myself is the choice value. You can see, so till this much it has printed inside the function, and after that in the choice value was equals to this I love myself, so it has printed that. So what you have understood is that whenever we go ahead and let's say if there is some variable which inside the function, so that if you try to use it outside of the function it will not work. But in the case of global, if there is one variable outside of the function, so you can use that inside, and it can also work outside anywhere in the Python, plus also inside the function. Okay, now guys, we will going to cover about a new concept which is known as decorator. Now this is a very cool feature. Okay, so let's take and understand this with the help of the example. So suppose we have burger. Okay, so you can imagine burger like a function. Okay, now let's say I want to add, let's say, some extra cheese okay, in the burger. Okay, so you can say extra cheese, you can compare that with the analogy of feature. Now when we talk about the burger, okay, so before you add the extra cheese, your burger will be exactly the same, but after you are going to add extra cheese to your burger, but still the original burger will be as it is. Okay, you will just going to top up with extra cheese, but the original form of the burger will remain same, right? So this is what the decorator is all about. So decorator basically helps you to create the function, and that functions remain the same. Okay, you can just add some extra features to that function, but the original functions will remain the same. That is the decorator. So here what happens is that whatever your main function, whatever your main function you have, okay, so basically you add some functions to that main function, but without changing the main function. So that is what we have the concept of decorator. So what decorator do is that whatever your main function is you have, okay, so in that main function nothing will going to happen, but of course if you want to add some extra function to that main function you can, but it will not going to make any change to the main function, and that is what the decorator is. Now let's say how you can create the decorator. So you, like you see here, define, just define the function, whatever name you want to keep. For example, let's say uh, anything name, any name you want. So let's say I put, let's say my uh, let's say my underscore, let's say uh, uh, hello decorator. So this is the name I kept. You can keep it anything you want, and inside this you will always going to put func. Okay, so this is the syntax you have. Define wrapper, so this will also be the exactly same. So this is just a syntax. Okay, and here you have print. Okay, before, and let's say here we put function, whatever function, then again print, let's say after, like this, and then sorry, and then what you will going to do is that you will just going to return the wrapper, like this. Now what basically happen is that this is a syntax. So suppose if you just go here and you can see the meaning in the notes, the decorator modifies the behavior of the function without changing its original code. That is what the decorator is all about. Okay, now in decorator, same, you can just name it whatever you want. This func, all the line will be same. Okay, except here before function you can write it whatever you want, after function you can write it whatever you want, and the function. So what basically does is that it is a main function. So before whatever function you want to run, okay, so let's say whatever function you want to run, you can run it, but before that function will going to run, this will be printed, and after your function will going to run, so this particular function will run. Okay, you will not going to understand, let me just complete the code. So you will always going to call this like this, my at the rate, okay, then my hello decorator, like this. Then whatever function you want to write, like let's say define, let's say or let's say, or maybe I can put, let's say hello. Okay, like this, and let's say print hi, let's say I write like this. Okay, So now whenever you will call this function, you can see this particular function which you have. So if you run this, so now you will going to see this is the function we created, which will print hi for you. So before this hi, this particular will going to run, and after that your printing, your custom function will run, which is this one, and after that this particular will run. So let's say if you run it, you can see before, hi, after. So before this one, then your main custom function, it make it run, which is hi, and after that you have this one. Okay, you can just write it whatever you want. Okay, anything you want to do before your custom function works. Okay, so something before your function, or here something which you want to do after your function. If you run it again, so you can see something before your function, then your function will run, and after that this one will going to work. So what I mean to say by the decorator meaning, so your main, as you can see, your main function, which is this one, main function will exactly be same, which is this before and after, but here in the function you just added extra function here. Okay, but without changing your main function, which is this one. Okay, so that is what the decorator is all about. Okay, and then last we have generator.py concept. Okay, so you have understood the, let's say, decorator, and then we have the generator. So generator generates value one by one using int instead of return. So it basically will help you to generate the I can say value one by one. Okay, for example, let's say I define, and let's say I put here count down. Okay, and let's say I put the parameter as num, and I write here while num, if num is, let's say, greater than 0 colon, I want it to yield. So yield is some by default uh, function you have. Okay, okay, and it will yield in num. Now let's say num, okay, should be minus equals to 1 every step. Okay, so this yield value will going to give one value at a time, right? Now let's say using the generator. Okay, let's say if I put for number in, let's say, uh, countdown, let's say till 5 we have set. So we want the number till 5. Okay, so whenever the number is greater than 0, so I want it to get minus by 1. Okay, then print, let's say, number, run it, you can say 5 4 3 2 1. So why that happens? So in the internal Python you will see that it will going to execute one by one. Of course in the printing it's showing us all of them, but it will going to print one by one. So that is what the generator is. It will just going to generate the value one time at a time. Okay, so generator basically save memory and are perfect for the large data set. Okay,